Good morning, everybody. So, I think I have 11 subscribers on this channel. And the reason I'm doing a video on this channel is because I woke up to discover all my content had been removed and I got a strike for my last video. And all I did was I talked about a devotional in this book. And I used the word when land-based vehicles all group up in the quiet country to the north and they are headed somewhere. It's called a da-da. I just used that word that starts with this letter and just briefly mentioned it, and I think they've probably been watching me. So anyway, I do have an alternative channel. I can live stream again in a week, so I'll be posting this on my Facebook page. And I this message is I really don't want to well, yeah, I'm not going to start out that way. I received a video about a prophecy that that some Christian people had gotten like last August, or a year ago, last August, last November, and it was about that thing that I got the strike for. And I feel like this is so, I think we all kind of know it. This is really big. This is global. And anyway, so I just paused it and I was like, well, it's time for my morning devotional. And immediately the spirit or something, some guide or somebody began talking to me. Oh, do I have my really groovy earrings? I made the coolest earrings yesterday. I was so excited to wear them. It's so funny. Okay, I'll wear those next time. Anyway, they had peacock colors, which I'm very excited about lately. Okay, so I laid some cards. I read my devotional. I got this prophecy. So I'm gonna read all that in reverse order. I was just kind of reflecting on, as I often do, what is the rest of my life going to look like in the lens of history? And I think it's quite possible I'm going to live another 50 years. I'm in my mid-50s. I think there's technology coming in that can really, really extend our lifetimes. I think we're going to have a lot more choice about how long we want to live. But anyway, yeah, isn't this a cute channel? Be yourself. I had this big idea. I was going to interview people with this channel, and then it just kind of never happened. But it's a backup channel, so so go ahead and subscribe to it. But hopefully after a week, I mean, my other channel having a strike, I could easily get another strike. I'm on their radar. They could take it down. It's and if this would have happened to me a year or two ago, it would have felt like a gut punch, and now it's just like whatever, and that comes into what I've read. So I do want to start out by saying, if you are of the other political persuasion than I am, and you probably know where I'm at, you might find some parts of this offensive. And I would just really encourage you to give it a try anyway. Just open your heart and your mind and just be like, oh, okay, the part that might offend you is kind of brief at the end, but I just want you to open your heart and your mind. But anyway, this is what I got. I'm just going to read it. The rest of my lifetime will be the time of the great emergence. That's what this being, whoever was channeling to me, it might have been Jesus. It was a very, very, there was an immense patience because they knew how slowly I write. The words would come through about a sentence at a time, and it was, no, not this word, this word. Okay, this idea, use your own words. No, this word. I mean, it was very, it makes me want to cry. Whoever gave this to me loves me very much. It's probably Jesus. I don't know. They're not revealing their identity, but he's like, you know me. Okay, so the rest of my lifetime will be called the time of the great emergence, coming out of darkness, dark thoughts and ways, to a brand new light of deep inner awareness of, and no word came through, but the light, God, the force, the, goodness. There will be a deep inner awareness, this brand new light of around within. You will see it and you will feel it in everything as if it all got plugged in. Radiance. So this God source energy, this the isness of our being. I'm going to turn this up again. This is nice background music. So this God energy, we will physically see it emanating as light from the rock, the tree, this source energy. And the very first album that was playing on my Pandora was called Radiance, and it was a picture of a Native American grandmother in the forest. And I just was so deeply struck by that image of harmony, knowledge, wisdom, radiance. Well, of course, you will say, this has been the truth all along, but we couldn't find it at times. The ways of your leaders will have changed in a bullfight, no longer aiming swords and arrows at the light, but sitting in the stall, petting, loving, caressing the bull back to health, then gently calling the bull back to its full strength, alive, free to express its own life and purpose. So I want you to think about that for a minute. I was like, bullfight, and they're like, go with it, just keep writing. I'm like, no, just writing down dictation what I was getting. And I have been doing that practice for a long time as a psychic, medium, whatever you want to call it, when I channel people's guides and higher selves, and sometimes their loved ones who have passed over. So I've gotten pretty good at listening and taking dictation, and that's what this was. Okay, think about the media. Think about the MK Ultra mind control, the programming. Let's whip the bull into a state of trauma and agitation. We will get those adrenal glands going, stick some arrows in, wave a red cape, get them enraged. They're basically controlling the biochemical, emotional state of the bull. It's such a sick, awful thing. And that's what they've been doing to us. Your leaders will have changed. So it's talking about this time of emergence as we're coming out of the shadow. I'm not even going to use this word, but like when there's an eclipse, you see this light shadow coming out, and that has a specific name that the Latin for it is crown. I'm not going to say it, but it's like coming out of the shadow into the light. This process of transition over the next 25, 30 years will be more and more and more light. Your leaders will have changed in a bullfight where instead of shooting swords and arrows, they're taking the bull and it's in recovery. So the people, there will still be leadership. We like to think of this perfect time when there won't be leaders over us in a hierarchy, but there will still be governments in the next, probably next year and the year after that. So your leaders will have changed. They're going to take you, this bull that they have been assigned to care for, and instead they've enraged it and manipulated it and then killed it. Instead, they're going to be helping it to convalesce. Okay, I said to this voice, really in the stall? You want me to say in the stall? Because that's like being in prison. And he's like, no, write it down. It's like recovery, inert. So there's going to be a time when, imagine our leaders asking us, do you need a blanket? Are you okay? Do you have everything you need? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Can you imagine the media saying, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And giving us messages that are uplifting and kind, that report on stories of kindness, that engage the mirror neurons. So imagine the leaders as formerly the bull fighters are now the bull healers. Okay, I'll continue that. It's an incredibly powerful image. Then gently calling the bull back to its full strength. alive and free to express its own life and purpose. So, can you imagine our leaders, our governments, all the voices on stage saying, what's your life purpose? What are you supposed to be doing as a being on this planet? Go find your purpose rather than getting in the corporate structure and doing da 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 and following in the ways of, and the very subtle narcissistic pressure that's been applied, that in order to be an acceptable human being you have to do and be and travel in this channel, and that is a fear-based approval system, which is what we've been in for millennia. And that's what we're coming into love. This is what this emergence is about. And can you imagine them dealing with the bull in love, wanting the bull to live into its full potential? It's going to take, I would say, at least 25 years for us to undo that program and come into a place of trust. And you mean I'm free? I'm free to answer and live what and who I know that I am. The time, oh, the counter was 11 minutes, 11 seconds. The moment I said, I am. So these are my thoughts. All will be well. And then the voice continued, like your dog in the sun just now. So Max lays on the bed with me in the morning and he stretches out on my golden blanket in the sun and goes to sleep. Like your dog in the sun just now, so full of trust, at peace, content to be filled with himself in this moment. When you think of those moments as a child curled up in the sun, there's no urgency. I hope that came through. A child curled up in the sun, filled with himself, content. This is coming. This is this incredible message of good news. And no matter how the powers try to shut it down, they can't stop what's coming. They shut down one voice, another voice calls out. They shut down the people, the rocks themselves will cry out. They gave me an Avatar movie-like image at one point, and it was a transcendent moment, and I kind of can't remember where it is, but yeah, you are entering the time of transition to birth yourselves. And then they gave me this image of the cervix opening. That's what's in childbirth. That's called the transition, and it's really, really painful because the cervix is stretching beyond its normal, shape, not beyond its capacity, but beyond its normal shape to allow the emergence of a child. So the emergence is when we will be emerging into a new world, a new way of being. There is a child that is ourselves that will be emerging, a new world. But now it's the transition out to birth yourselves. And that avatar-like image that I got was, the part where all the animals show up. And the battle that's being waged against the controllers, against these usurpers, these parasites who destroyed their own world and came to this world to get unobtainium. Did you catch on to the unobtainium? It's not obtainable. Something that they want to get that they'll never get enough of through the act of parasiting. Whatever these beings are, the game's up. It's not going to work. And what ends that battle in that movie Avatar, what turns the tide, okay, everyone is summoned from, this tribe and that tribe and all the tribes, they all get summoned. And the one guy who used to be one of them, and now he's free and he's with these people and he changes, and there are a lot of people in that they were specifically born into the enemy camp, and then they woke up and they've come over and they're like, this is what they're really doing. This is what they mean to do, and they disclose the plan. They're not here to negotiate with you. They're here to destroy you if you stand in their way of getting what they want. So then what turns the tide is the animals, the nature itself. And they just gave me this, I just couldn't communicate the enormity of this moment of awakening that was just being communicated to me about just the fullness of everything awakening. Okay, so moving on, talking more about this period that we're entering right now and what we see happening around the planet. The time of transition, when the cervix is stretching not beyond its capacity, but beyond its normal shape. You must overcome the fear of change. We don't know what it looks like on the other side of this. We look at the gentle country to the north and we're like, what are we know what we're asking for, but do we know what it's going to look like? Have no fear of change. It must change. The planet has to change or die. I mean, that's not the right exactly phrase, but it is the transition. So anyway, we have to let go of the fear of change and standing up in the truth. I'm just going to throw in there, last night we were watching Murdoch Mysteries season 8, and it's the women's suffrage movement. And these women marching and sometimes being beaten or put in paddy wagons and taken to jail and then tried in these, the whole thing takes place in Toronto. So they're taken to these, courts. And I think they got the charge of nuisance, being a public nuisance. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a parallel. And, and in that particular show, the prosecution completely dropped its case because this woman lawyer showed up to say, yes, I'm the first woman lawyer in this country. I'm not even going to say the name of the country to the north because it might get a strike again. And they go to the prosecution and they say, here's what we have on your attorney, and we'll make this public if you don't let us go. So that was just a very interesting, juicy bit. But anyway, getting back to sometimes that's what it takes, and it standing up and saying it has to change. And here's one card that pops out: trust this process. We've been through this before. You've been through this before. Yes, it's a tower moment. The man and the woman are falling from the top of the tower, but there's consciousness behind it, supporting the change. View it as though it's happening to somebody else and just know this is how it goes. It's going to be okay. And we've been through this time, this past year. Okay, now they're going to talk to me about the part that might offend people who don't see things the way I do. The unawakened. Yes, this voice looks at me with the most loving smile, a laugh hiding in his chest. And he said, they will know. They will come to understand that they have been deceived by their trusted saints and leaders, led astray and used like pawns. This all came to me pretty much word for word. They will come to see that they've been used. Have mercy on the blind. And then this interesting bit came in, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone either, but okay, I just want you to know for reference, I grew up in a Christian household. At a pivotal point, I think it was kind of the fallout of the whole Jerry Falwell religious right and the sickness, deception, and corruption. It's when the dark co-opted the Republican Party with the Bushes, and that whole really, really sick bunch of people. And poor Bush Jr. was completely mind controlled. Kathy O'Brien, who was used as an MK Ultra sex slave in that administration, talks about what was really going on. Anyway, my mom became a Democrat. My brother became a Democrat and his wife, and a small portion of the family was just like, this party over here seems to better express our values. It seems better and cleaner. Went to an Episcopal church where you could be a Democrat and a Christian, and then it swung, as they do. They swung over and began to inhabit the Liberal Party, and they said everything that they did and blah blah blah. I'm not going to go into the story, but the one piece that was communicated to me is that this party was deceived and led astray a lot of people. Not everybody, of course. A huge portion of those people are very spiritually connected, but some of them like stand in this kind of arrogant academic agnosticism. And that was a tool very specifically employed to detach them from spirit. And then they would be easy prey. And C.S. Lewis writes a lot about that. And he wrote during the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And he was very privy to that kind of deception. He was in academia. And he talks about that, the seduction of intellectualism, and really how it's a disconnect from spirit. And then you're easy prey. Anyway, he just pointed that out to me, that was a tool that was used. And then the voice continued, pray first and foremost that they go into their hearts and find me there. I will set them straight. Draw near, and then the verse came to me, draw near to him and he will draw near to you. Pray first and foremost that they go into their hearts and find me there. I will set them straight. They were led to use the tools of the dark and ego when they believed good was withheld. So during the DJT era, they whipped them into a frenzy. They used the tools of dark. They believed that good was being withheld from them. And how did they cope with that? How were they led to cope with that? And I have to say here, a lot of people developed a lot of virtue during that time in the Dem Party. People who answered to a higher calling of integrity within them, to be patient and kind. But what were they led to do? What were they instructed to do? They eventually burned buildings down, harassed innocent people, killed, maimed. And this was celebrated and held aloft as, oh, they linked racism to it. Oh, this is a natural response. You're angry about that, right? And meanwhile, people who have suffered at the hands of prejudice are like, this is not the way. Okay, this isn't how I got through this. I used the tools of light. Okay, so then the pendulum swings, and now our party believes that good is being withheld from them. The election got stolen, all of that. God, I hope I don't get taken down for saying all this. I'm probably on their radar. Please don't take this down. I have 11 subscribers, okay? Can I be under the radar? Go into your heart. Whoever's watching this, you go into your heart and see what you find there. I'm hearing someone laughing in the background. And I feel the hand of God on this video. It's being protected. So you have been disciplined by the light. Okay, so they were led to use the tools of the dark and ego when they believed good was withheld. You have been disciplined by the light. So after the tremendous gut punch of J refers to the first month of the year, and this is the day. After that tremendous gut punch, and a year later, these innocent the vast majority of them. I think there's 20 or 30. There's a website you can go on to. I can't think of what it is right now, but it's about, oh, I think it's called the Washington Gulag. They're still in jail. They haven't had a fair trial. Some of them have gone to trial. Some of them were told that if you sign a confession of a bunch of shit that wasn't true, you can go free. Really, really dark shit. And after that gut punch, we're like, oh, if we all show up, millions of us, to say, okay, let's handle this in a court of law. Let's do this the right way. And then to have happen what happened. I still get choked up about it. What did we have to do to get through this past year? We were disciplined by the light. Patience, love, forbearance, kindness, trust, tolerance, peace. Whoever was watching just left. Anyway, we were disciplined by the light. Very powerful insight. Okay, Jesus leads the children by the hand. He has been walking you through this. And then I began to see this whole overview of the timing of everything. This is why the country to the north leads the way. And then I had this thought, these are my words. They're like the regular kids in the classroom who weren't deluded by thinking they were special. They were actually more functional. Humility and ordinariness, personal responsibility. The kids that were taught that they were average, that they weren't special, that they just needed to go get the job done. Americans are fed and seduced by this line that the Hollywood, the celebrity, that you have to have this star quality to even be acceptable. It's a very sad, sick, distorted, twisted message, and I don't think the country to the north gets the same kind of message. They're just like, plug in and do your job. Don't make a big fuss. And therefore, we've just got this different mentality. And when something happens in this country, the voices of the media, the propaganda, inflammatory, the reaction, inflammatory, angry, reactionary, hatred, vitriol. And I've seen it coming from both sides over the decades. I mean, my whole life, it's like, oh my God, the way the media talks to and about people and things, that's like a third grade or super hyper. It's not normal. And they're trying to make us think that that's normal. And so we've tended to take a cue from that, and our, sometimes our movements and the actions and stuff that we take, they're angry and reactionary. And like I observed this when we went to a local municipality to come against a certain regulation that they wanted to enforce that would stop you from going into a certain place if you didn't have something, and you had to provide proof that you did in order to get in. Otherwise, everyone had to do this forever. And we went to the county commissioner, and we made our voices heard. And I just observed myself and everybody in there. We came with a voice of defensiveness, aggression, attack. We wanted to attack the commissioners who were sitting there listening, like they do at 9 a.m. every Tuesday morning. And there was a guy among us who'd been doing this over a course of time, and he had a completely different approach. He realized you have to be patient and kind and provide proof, be respectful. These are all human beings. It was a completely different mentality than all of us, and I realized it's a conditioning that we went into, and that reactionary kind of angry shit never really accomplishes anything. And if you're in an intimate relationship, you know that. You know what works and what doesn't. Reasonable, kind, be in your own energy field, own your shit, and then approach somebody in a nonviolent, clear way. And that is what the neighbors to the north are doing. There's this self-responsibility, this self-contained. If you watch the press conferences, the preemptive press conferences, the media is not listening. Nobody's, The big guns aren't paying attention. Their message is being quashed and everything, but they're doing their own PR. And when you listen to them, they're so clear and contained. No big bells and whistles, no, none of this flash and reaction and gut and anger shit that Americans do just by habit. This is why the country to the north leads the way. Pray for them that their voices as a shout will go out and be delivered to the masses. This message contains the simple codes necessary to pick the lock on your captivity. So this was a message that says, yes, it's possible that they will be shut down. I mean, look at what happened to my YouTube channel. I got a strike just for saying the word that starts with a C. And all I was doing was reading a devotional. The entire message was about when you see somebody suffering, how do you deal with that? And I was talking about like children and animals. And they shut down. They said, your content has been removed due to violation of community standards. I'm like, what? And it's because I said the C word about the country to the north that starts with a C. Good Lord. So we're told to pray because those forces want to stop the message from getting out. And their message contains the energetic codes. The way they're delivering it, they've gotten their shit together emotionally, mentally, psychologically. They're coming from this really, really healthy, balanced place. And I call them the quiet neighbors to the north, and I've always been fascinated by them and thought, they deserve a lot more attention. And, just like JP Sears says, when this all started, most Americans scratched their heads, which I did the day before I learned where they were headed. I scratched my head and I said, what's the capital of that country? And JP Sears is like, most Americans realize not only did they not know what the capital was, but they'd never asked themselves. That's so true. And it's like, yeah, these were the functional kids in the classroom who didn't speak up, who they just put their heads down and did their work, and they didn't need to feel special. Anyway, the codes of this message, we have to pray that their message gets out, whatever means, and it doesn't matter how many times we get shut down, because the message is going out energetically. So take this to heart. When Jesus or whoever was telling me, pray that their voices as a shout will go out and be delivered to the masses. Dear God, we pray that this message contains the codes of freedom that will pick the lock on our captivity. We pray that this continues to go out and go out and go out. And I can tell you one thing that it is for sure. When we declared our independence from the UK back in 1776, that date and that document, the reason we celebrated it is that we declared our independence. They didn't give us permission. They did nothing. They said nothing. That date has nothing to do with the captors. And I've always kind of assumed that somewhere, somehow, this was established, agreed upon. No, it wasn't agreed upon. It was decided within the individual. This is who we are. We're declaring, like a woman in an abusive marriage has to declare for herself, I'm free of this. I'm not going to subject myself to this anymore. Does he agree to it? No, she just leaves. She does what it takes. And that's the self-responsibility. That's the, that internal liberation has to happen before it shows up on the outside. And when it happens on the inside, you're not trying to get it from the other person by, which means you're still recognizing their power over you. You're simply moving on. You're declaring it. You're insisting on it. And because we all have to live on the same planet, sometimes you do have to occupy your truth. Occupy the space. Sit in the clarity of the truth that you know, and you're calling them to it too. And you're like, I'm calling out the lie. I don't have to get mad about it, but the game is up. Yeah, very powerful. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read this devotional for today, and I'm just noticing that it's really powerful. Okay, this card came up too, playfulness. No, they're saying do the card spread. Okay, the card spread that I got was new vision. You're seeing a new vision. Going with the flow. I think this is us trusting the way things are going right now, the energetics of what's happening. There needs to be a let go. We can't, and over this past year, man, did we have to let go, right? And trust. Trust. There's an isolation period. There is a, we've, with all the planets being in retrograde, we've had to do a lot of internal work and grief work that we agreed to programs of that compromised us as children. We grieve. The grief is about the fact that we sold ourselves out in order to survive. Apply that on a global scale. And this is the process we will and are and have been going through. They're saying as a collective, you're going to go through this, and then boom, you're going to be here. And it's going to be amazing. Okay, so what is the next story? This is so beautiful. Abba Zaba and God's Care. So this is a book about a woman who rescued dogs, greyhounds, and each one taught her something about the divine. By the time our foster Abba Zaba was ready to be adopted, he was healthy, happy, and strikingly handsome. Weeks earlier, however, when we first brought this tall, long-legged white male with brindle patches into our home, he had infections in all of his toenails. The pad of one foot had been cut off, and he was badly infected. His eyes were shallow and hazy. He lay pathetically on the floor, not really caring to move. Over the next 2 weeks, Abba received the veterinary care, medicines, and vaccinations he needed. Several baths, good brushings, and nutritious meals quickly added to his well-being, and he began to blossom. Then one evening, he suddenly began to convulse violently, snapping, screaming, urinating, and struggling for breath. He was having a grand mal seizure, a bad one. 2 weeks later, he had another seizure, not as severe as the first, but still a grand mal. A specialist determined that his seizures were probably a reaction to the rabies V he had received. A very low thyroid was also a contributing cause. We were advised that he could have no more rabies V's, that his thyroid must be treated for the rest of his life, and that he would likely continue to have occasional seizures. Now I began to worry. Abba had come quite, so they're fosters and they're looking for, permanent owners. Abba had become quite an outgoing, affectionate dog. He loved sharing a bed with other dogs and would often cuddle up with us on the couch. But when having a seizure, he sounded like hurt prey and could cause other dogs to attack him. His wild, involuntary snapping while having a seizure could also hurt other dogs or people. Not only would Abba need a home willing to make the huge commitment to caring for his special health needs, but also one where he would not be hurt or hurt others when he had a seizure. This was quite a big prayer request. But I learned that when God answers prayer, he doesn't hold back. He loves to give good gifts to his children and do it in a manner that is above and beyond. As the Apostle Paul wrote, God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. And I just ask you to be plugging this into the channeling that I just got about the transition and the emergence that we are entering into now, this incredibly good news. One day I received a call from a family wanting to see Abba. When they arrived, Abba greeted them enthusiastically. The mother, father, and preteen daughters all got on the floor to interact with him. I found out that the mother homeschooled the girls, so would be home with him most of the time. This looked like a good match. I inquired, your placement rep must have told you about his seizures. Do you have any questions? The husband and wife looked at each other and said, what seizures? My heart sank. I told them about the seizures and how this thyroid would have to be monitored and medicated. Would this be a deal breaker? To my surprise, the couple began to laugh. In God's above and beyond care, he brought a man who was a physician, not just any physician, an endocrinologist. And he was not just any endocrinologist, but one whose special interest was thyroid-related diseases. Furthermore, the wife had a thyroid condition that required the same medication as Abba's. They also had 2 diabetic cats that needed insulin shots twice a day and routine monitoring of their blood sugar. Abba's medical needs were not a problem. In fact, the man pored over Abba's blood work reports and began to give us some valuable information that ended up helping other low thyroid greyhounds. God, I would never have imagined praying so specifically for a home with a stay at home mom to monitor Abba, a doctor dad that had specialized in conditions of Abba's, and the family experienced in caring for animals with health issues. God's abundant love had gone above and beyond my humble prayers. Expect this. As the psalmist David declared, "You prepare a table before me. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows." I just want to say before I read the very last verse, and God's directing me to say this, that this past year has caused we've gained endurance maybe, but maybe the hope and the trust has gone a little cold. Where is God? Is this going to be another one of those things where we have to just somehow pull trust magically out of the air and watch our country be destroyed? And I'm talking historically, like when really bad stuff happened all over the planet, where was God? And there's a collective genetic memory of experiences like that, and we're hoping that that's not what it's going to be like, but there's this kind of like, it's a combination between endurance and being jaded. And I think God is blowing on the embers of faith and hope to become strong, to become ablaze, to say, this is the time. And we've had to learn to do that with some non-attachment. And we're coming into a lot of Aquarian energy, which is going to help us have this hope, this intention, this movement with detachment, which is something sorely needed. We needed to grow up. We needed to be disciplined by the light. And when you look at the whole, I'm beginning to understand, and I feel like this message that God's given me this morning is, I'm still in control. I've always been in control. This is that part of the story where ... And this message is about God's abundant care, his incredible love to oversupply what is needed. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us, to him be the glory forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians 3:20 and 21. Blessings.